now I am walking down some track in the middle of nowhere that goes behind some people's houses and farms, and hopefully none of those people will see or notice or call the piggies on me. Yeah, so where am I going? What am I doing? So where are we going? I'm going to tell you where we're going. We're going to go see one of New England's most obscure, least known about, least photographed, abandoned locomotives. It's really far out there. It's not well known, so let's just get to the video. I am hoping that what I'm looking for is still back here. I see a very modern machine, which is maybe not the best sign. What we're looking at ahead of us is obviously not an abandoned machine. That is a very new looking track maintenance vehicle. I guess it's light enough that they could park it on this track, but this track is that is not in good shape. Let's see what's on the other side of this, because hopefully what I'm looking for is there. Oh yeah, I think we're good. There she is. This is a very small, I believe 44-ton locomotive, judging by the side rods on the axles. It's probably very, very old. It says it was last lubed in almost a year to the date, 1984. Today is December 30th, so that's kind of cool. We have a nice little slice fill-in. If you can read the SLICE, you're doing good. RPKD under that. I'm not sure what that stands for. And we have a little barcode. I'm not sure what that's all about. Let me tell you, this sticker is actually interesting because it is from the Griffin Wheel Company. They are a manufacturer of railroad wheels, and the sticker says 2022 on it, which means that the sticker was probably slapped on the side of the locomotive from a rail worker who was probably doing maintenance on one of the rail maintenance vehicles nearby. So that means that the site is semi-active, that the railroad doesn't completely ignore it, and that the other track maintenance vehicles on the site are not abandoned. They're just sitting there because they're not in use at the moment. Let's get back to the video. So yeah, over here, as you can see, there's an active mine site. You can hear up on the hills behind us, there's some mining going on. And this little locomotive, this was apparently the first locomotive of this short line railroad, Housatonic, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It was a small tourist operation, and over the years they were able to buy up this track from Conrail and a bunch of other lines that they never used, which is kind of not the greatest. A lot of lost opportunity there for freight traffic in the general New York region. But yeah, they started as a tourist railroad, and I believe this was their first engine, at least from what I've read. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some B-roll, and I will narrate over that in a second to, you know, either refute or prove what I'm telling you. Telling you that I'm going to narrate is because I see a lot of these YouTube channels, a lot of guys who, you know, they'll go to these places and they're not sure what it is, and they're just like guessing and they're throwing out information. I'm guessing based off my memory. There's nothing wrong with that, but I also want to give you the correct information. So let's get to some B-roll and let's narrate this sucker later. So yeah, everything I told you is true, but let me give you more detail. This unit was built in February of 1942 and began its life as the Remington Arms Company No. 2. It is a 45-ton locomotive built by GE, and this unit served as an industrial switcher for the massive Remington Arms factory in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It features side rods, which is similar to many industrial locomotives built during World War II for the United States Armed Forces. It also features dimples at the end. You can see one right there. Those little dimples at the end of each of these locomotives, they were put there for polling train cars on adjacent tracks. So polling is a very outdated method of moving rail cars. It was a very dangerous practice that most railroads discontinued by the early 1960s, and it was later outlawed. So yeah, Housatonic later became a short line railroad serving a former New Haven route going north-south along the western Connecticut border. Somewhere along the way, this tiny locomotive was simply shoved onto this siding, and it has seemingly been forgotten about. It's currently stored about a mile away from the nearest railroad crossing on a former quarry siding. Like I said, the quarry is still active, but they are no longer a rail customer, and the siding is beat to crap. So the location seems like it's obscure enough that it would be safe, but that's definitely not the case. Scrappers or perhaps railroad personnel have come in and they've taken whatever valuable components they can off the locomotive. The cab was sealed at some point, as you can see here, but the back door was kind of wide open, flapping in the breeze, and some of the panels around the windows are all kind of like falling off. So it seems unlikely that this locomotive will ever run again. It is presumably sat on the siding for at least 2 decades. The last photo I saw of it, and the only photo I saw of it, was from 2018. So it has been here for a couple of years now at the very least, and probably significantly longer than that. One last bit of video before we get out of here. 2 bits, actually. So we've got the locomotive, we know about that, but I haven't showed you the other cool stuff here. Other cool stuff is this Bay City crane, which is incredibly old. Again, if you know the age of something like this, let me know. I'm going to guess at least 1940s, maybe beyond that. As you can see inside, it's all like rusted out and ripped out, and there's really not much left other than all these big gears. This thing has not moved in ages, along with the flat car that it is on. And the flat car that it is on brings us to the next cool thing here. So, here we have a build date, 1957, April 1957. So whenever you see BLT, that means, you know, it's not lunchtime. That's when this train was built. Got a lot of rotted wood on top. It was new in 1941, but no more. Here we've got the number of the flat car. Here we have the weight capacity, and here we have the logo. There is another work machine up here that is also abandoned. It is beat to shit, but I don't want to talk to the payload guy. I've been here so long that I want to avoid even being noticed for being here. Even though I'm going to post this on the internet, it's fine. So yeah, I've shown you just about everything. I definitely wanted to show you that flat car. I'm glad that payloader guy didn't see me. One last thing, I think I've figured out what this guy does. This guy inserts some kind of clamps into the track. You can see those clamps here. We have the controls here, cycle start, cycle stop, power on, off. It looks very dusty and dirty. So it hasn't moved in a little bit, I want to say, just because of how kind of gritty that looks. The wasp spray seems relatively recent, as well as the fire extinguisher tag, which says 2001. So that's a sign that at least up until 2001, this thing was being moved. Now, I don't know if there's anything wrong with it. I don't know if they parked it here because it's trash or because it needs, like if it needs work, you would bring this to a shop. You wouldn't leave it on a siding in the middle of nowhere. Maybe it's just a bunch of scrap metal. Maybe it's time has come. Anyway, so yeah, this has been a fun little side adventure. Cool little trains back there. Now I gotta walk back to the car, probably about 10 minutes, find myself someplace to have lunch, get back on the road and head south. Okay, so as I was editing this video, I found some tiny bits of additional information that kind of call into question the actual ownership of this locomotive. So, according to a post on the Northeast Rail photo site, this locomotive has indeed sat here for 2 decades. The photo is dated as having been taken in 2005. So that was 18 years ago. The photo's caption suggests that even way back then, the locomotive had two blown motors. And the post claims that the locomotive was gifted to Housatonic Railroad in hope that they would restore it and give it to the Danbury Railroad Museum, which is kind of in the same region here. Housatonic was rumored to have two replacement engines for this locomotive sitting around, but obviously that work was never performed because it's sitting here 18 years later. So we should also point out something incredibly obvious here. The locomotive has no logo painted on it. There's no number, there's no road number. Perhaps there was a logo and road number that was kind of covered over by that graffiti on the side, but for that to be the only place that there was a logo, that seems a little strange to me. So I really have doubts if this locomotive was at all used in tourist train operation. That is what has been repeated online. I'm not sure who the source of that information is. Sometimes when things get repeated online, there's not an actual factual proof behind it. So if someone has that proof, by all means comment below and contact me. Like, I want actual solid visual proof, written statements. I don't know. I need something to convince me that this thing was actually used as a tourist train locomotive after leaving the Remington Arms factory. Interestingly, there are other photos on the Northeast Rail site of the locomotive in use at the Remington Arms factory site in 1984, and it is in pristine looking condition. It might have had blown motors, I'm not sure, but it looked really well polished. And then here we are many years later and sitting in this siding in the middle of nowhere, looking rusted to hell. So, this brings me back to the fact of, does Housatonic actually own this locomotive officially? Who knows? Technically, it's probably on their property, which is 9/10 of ownership. I don't want to definitively say that it was a tourist train locomotive or that Housatonic actually owns it. Maybe it's privately owned, or it was privately owned and that person maybe passed away or gave it to them, and I don't know what happened. If you got proof, give it to me. Otherwise, this is an abandoned locomotive sitting in the middle of nowhere. Researching this thing has been a very unfriendly beast. I've spent way too many hours trying to look around, trying to find some info on it, and really coming up short, which is vexing to me because finding information about locomotives is really not that hard when you poke around online. So this one's a little weird and kind of annoying in that way. So, given a dearth of information about it, my hyperbolic title for this video, the most abandoned, least photographed diesel locomotive in the Northeast, that's what it is. There's 2 photographs of it that I've found sitting on this siding in the last 20 years. Is it truly abandoned, or does someone own it? Who owns it? Do they know that they own it? Let's not even go there. So yeah, I'm going to wrap up this video here because there's really not much else to tell you. I got stuff to do. You got stuff to do. Let's get out of here. Subscribe because you never know when I'm going to post a video otherwise. And let's go.